stand beside me. We're better as a unit. Ain't enough bullets in a gun to hit us all.
What's up, everybody? Trev and Hollywood back for another episode of Code Switch. Uh, I got a polo hat on today, so your boy needs a haircut, but I couldn't be on here looking shaggy, so figured I'd come in with a little bit of swag. Hollywood, I
Yeah, I
got to get
feel
on
you,
your
man.
level, man. You over there looking clean, man.
Hey, just for this episode, man. Just for this episode.
Cool, cool. Well, hey, for the people that are listening, watching for the first time, Hollywood, do you want to give a little intro of yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Emmanuel. I am a software engineering manager. Been in the industry for a little bit over a decade now, and just happy to share my experiences. Very raw in a very raw way. No code switch required on this episode are these this podcast. So just this is my time to really come and show up as my authentic self. So uh, definitely love being in my element here.
I love that, man. I love that. So I'll give a little intro on myself, Trevor Evans. About a decade of experience in the software industry. Started out as an IC, got into engineering management as well. Did that for a couple of years, and now I'm actually back in kind of an IC role, but I'm actually in the process of transitioning between opportunities. Maybe I'll speak on that a little bit more in the near future. Don't want to give away too much, given right now kind of getting that finalized. So super excited about kind of the next steps in my career. But yeah, Hollywood, whether he likes to admit it or not, he's my mentor and kind of taught me a lot of the things that got me to where I am today. So always appreciate him and kind of the guidance and wisdom he's given me over these years. Um, so yeah, so kind of just going right into the episode. So we've been planning this for a while and we've had very interesting discussions about what would what would an org look like if we built it. So this is kind of an off script episode and it's going to be a little fun exercise that we do, but Hollywood, do you maybe want to give a little bit of an overview of like how we ended up here?
Yeah, so we always and I assume this happens in other friend groups as well, have conversations about, we were in charge. This is how we do it, right? And we decided, hey, let's come together and let's actually do it for the podcast and let's do it live
Yep.
and kind of go back and forth and see, how we would build out our ideal org. Um maybe it'd be a surprise, maybe it won't. Maybe we'll come to the same conclusion as the majority of the companies in the world where, hey, this is the structure that actually works. And but we'll see. I'm interested in seeing how it turns out. We didn't plan any of like the actual work together. It's just an episode, that idea that we came up with. So you all gonna get it the way we get it.
Absolutely. I'm stoked to kind of get into this because I would say a lot of the orgs that I've seen, not only in my experience, but even in talking to others, talking to you, Hollywood, talking to other people in the industry, I think we always kind of have these commonalities across the way that our orgs work. But I know we've had a couple of discussions and kind of our thinking might deviate a little bit from maybe what people are used to seeing, especially in more of like enterprise level organizations. So it's going to be interesting, um, us doing this little exercise. But y'all know how I like to do it. Y'all know before we get into anything, I have to make sure that we kind of set the foundation, and we all kind of keep things centered. So, and I'm a strong believer in what keeps us centered is the Word and Christ and our religion and Christianity. So, before we jump into any of this, I want to kind of take it to some scripture a little bit and just kind of set the stage. So the scripture that I chose for this episode, Hollywood, is First Corinthians 12th chapter. And for the entirety, I would say verses 4 through 31. Now, I'm not gonna read all of that as usual, because that would take a little minute. But basically within those verses it talks about a physical body and it kind of relates that to the body of Christ and how people work together, right? And how the body works together and how people should work together within the body of Christ. So I feel like that kind of relates to this topic because in order for an org to work, right? In order for a company to work, like it takes a lot of people working together in different facets. So there are a couple of excerpts that I want to kind of go over within these verses. And so I'll just start from the beginning. I'll read a couple verses and then I'll kind of deviate and kind of jump around a little bit. So verse 4, now there are diversities of gifts, but the same spirit. Verse 5, and there are differences of administrations, but the same Lord. And so, right there off the bat, right? Like it's kind of setting the stage to say, hey, we all operate and we have different purposes, right? And then if we skip down a little bit, let's see, verse 12. For as the body is one and hath many members, and all the members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. Verse 13. For by one Spirit are we all baptized into one body, whether we be Jews or Gentiles, whether we be bond or free, and have been all made to drink into one Spirit. Verse 14. For the body is not one member, but many. So once again, we're all working together. And then this is interesting. Uh, Verse 15, if the foot shall say, because I am not the hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? So that speaks to us, right? And it says, hey, be accountable. If you're a part of this body, if you're a part of this organization, we're all working towards a goal, don't try to pull out and say, like, oh, I'm not working towards this, and we've seen that, right? In my experience managing teams, sometimes you have those instances where people try to run away from accountability. So we just have to make sure that we're accountable for the work that we do, right? Um, and then the last thing I would say is if we skip down to verse 21, and the eye cannot say unto the hand, I have no need of thee, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. So the last thing I'll mention before we move on is never let someone deprive you of your purpose. Never let someone tell you we don't have a need for you, especially if you're in that space. If you were called into that space, nobody can take that from you. That was God's intent for you. Stand on it. Stand on business. Code Switch podcast.
Hey, I love it, man. Love it.
Yeah, yeah. But when everybody gets some time, First Corinthians chapter 12, verses 4 through 31. So okay, let's just dig right into it. So for this episode, Hollywood, what I kind of want us to do is go through an exercise of building out our own organization on paper. So I shared a link with you a little bit earlier. So if you can get that up,
Yeah,
then
let
we
me
can we'll kind of go
yeah.
through this. And for the people that are listening, don't worry, we'll talk through everything. So while Hollywood's getting that up, the way I envision this Hollywood is we're just going to kind of keep the higher levels just as one vertical because that can change a lot depending on the company, right? Like I don't want to get into, oh, we have an SVP of this and an SVP of that, but rather um just in one organization, do we think that there would be an SVP, right? Instead of kind of thinking about it horizontally until we get down to certain levels. Like I think once we get to the engineering manager and the scrum team level, and then what are all the cross-functional parts of that team, I think that's when I think we can have some good discussion around the horizontal part. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's see how I go.
Cool.
I would I would I would question some roles here already, but we can
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
so right now
Are we
there's a
good?
what I see right here is a CTO. I got the SVP talking into the CTO and the director, I guess talking into the SVP.
Yeah, let me put a let's see here. I'm gonna put an arrow into but yes, you're right. The director will report into the SVP.
Gotcha, gotcha. What I would like to know is between the SVP and the director, what are the roles and responsibility that distinguish those two?
That's a great question. I think that I think the higher you get up in an organization, I think the more time that people spend in meetings. So honestly, I feel like the SVP is really just regurgitating information to the CTO, and the director has hopefully more time to be boots on the ground with their organization versus the SVP probably has multiple directors. So the SVP is just trying to aggregate information as much as they can and bubble it up. Um,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's
Wait.
valid. I think it's valid. I think what you're saying is valid. It's valid to question like, does an org need an SVP and a director?
So, question: you remember that game we used to play back as in the kindergarten? Probably. I mean, I don't know if everybody played it, but it was that I think it was a telephone game, right? You have a line of people, a line of
Hmm.
kids, and it's like, hey, the teacher comes to the first kid. I'm gonna give you this saying, and then you're supposed to repeat it to the next person, and next person, and next person. And
Hmm.
I've never seen it make it to the last person in the group, and it has the same context or the same words as what it was initially spoken. And I feel like
Hmm.
with organizations that have a lot of hierarchy to it, that's exactly what happens, right? Like from the people who are communicating up or whatever, something gets lost in translation when it makes it to its final destination. But that's my opinion on it.
No, that's valid. That's valid, right? And that's actually one thing I was thinking about too, because in some orgs you'll see uh not just an SVP, but you'll even see VPs underneath an SVP. And I've
Mhm.
also had those same sentiments where I'm like, well, does that really make sense to have like a VP underneath an SVP? Like what is the difference? Um so are you saying then that we should, because once again, we're trying to build this out. So, are you saying then that maybe it makes more sense to remove an SVP and just have a director?
I would say if I were building it out, I actually don't even think I would start top down. I think I would start
Okay.
bottom up.
Okay.
And the reason why
Let's
I think
start bottom up then.
I would start bottom up, right, is because if I'm building it out, I want to build it from the people who are the closest to the problem that's being solved. So,
Yeah.
I always had this belief, right, that, at the end of the day, engineers are the one who's doing the work, right? The actual, if you think about,
Yeah.
I guess, building a car, right? Like the engineers are the one who's doing the manual labor, actually putting the car together. They don't have to sell it, right? And
Yeah.
they don't come up with the features they need to come into the car, but they're the ones that build in the car, and so they're gonna have a lot more insight into the problem space for that car, whatever they're building out. And I would actually start there, and also too, I think context matters. I think we're building a tech organization.
True. Yes. Absolutely. So let's start from the bottom then. So I'm gonna add a few a couple boxes. And I'm just kind of winging it here. So I'm just adding a bunch of random boxes. And we can think about this lower level here, Hollywood, as a scrum team.
Okay.
So this is where we can say, okay, we have our engineers, we have QA if we think we should have QA, we have architects, product. This is where these boxes will this is what this will represent, and then we can build up from there. Um, so obviously we know we would need engineers, right? Like I I I I don't think there's any disagreement on that, right?
Yeah, 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 definitely.
All right, so and I don't even know if we even want to get into how many engineers we think.
Yeah, let's do this. Let's build it out. Let's put the roles we think we would need, right? Let's just go ahead and spread those
All
out,
right,
and then let's
so
iterate on it.
I have a box for engineer. So we know we need X number of engineers.
Yep.
All right. Then what after that? So Scrum Master, QA, uh, product, business analyst, architect.
You want my honest opinion?
I think you're honest. I
We
know
might
where you're
be
going.
we
So
might be able to
so let
stop
me
here. Let me stop. Let me stop.
Well, how about this? Let's take it one by one.
Yeah, let's
So
do it.
so I let's start with um the interesting one, I think. Product.
Okay.
Would you put a product manager on a scrum team?
I would, yeah.
Okay. Why?
So the reason why I would put a product person on the scrum team is that I still need somebody to go do that fact finding process, right? Of hey,
Mhm.
going and identifying what the requirements are for what we're trying to build. Also, I feel like PMs are a lot closer to people than the engineers are, and plus, I think you want people like PMs to be closer to the people than engineers. I think I touched on in the previous episode of how engineers naturally communicate, and I think it's fairly off putting. So you don't want them actually talking to people if you if
Yeah,
you can avoid it.
fair, fair. So I have an interesting question. And this isn't necessarily in the vein of whether I believe a product manager should be on a scrum team or not. I'll give my opinion on that in a second. But what is the difference between a product manager and a product owner from your perspective?
There is no difference in my opinion. I think that the industry feels that a product owner is more ingrained within the actual Scrum team than the PM is. The PM is at a much, I think, higher level. But you
Hmm.
also you have like product owner, product manager, and project managers, right? And I'll be the first one to tell you that I can tell you the real difference between a PO PM and the two PM. Sorry. So a product
Hmm.
manager, a product owner, project manager, I can tell you, I really can tell you the difference. I think
Yeah,
at some point the roles kind of got split, and then they was like, hey, we need to create a new role for it.
yeah,
But I don't know.
yeah. So I kind of agree with you. I don't really know the exact differences. I've had I had a conversation with someone before. Not necessarily, I didn't explicitly ask them this question, but the way that they talked, it kind of came off as if a product owner is essentially like a more junior version of a product manager.
I've heard that.
And I'm not sure why. For the record, I'm not sure why, but that was my interpretation. But to your point, I don't really understand, well, like why that is, especially if in most teams that I've witnessed, you don't have it's not like you have a product owner and a product manager, nor do I think you should have a
Sure.
product owner and a product manager. I think I think you're just fine with one or the other personally. Uh and one thing that I've mentioned to Hollywood in the past is I almost wonder if I would be good with a business analyst. And the reason I say that is because I do agree that you need someone that interfaces with the business. But in my experience, Hollywood, and I don't know if you've experienced this or not, but I feel like what happens a lot, number one, engineers already still end up in these conversations. And so it's almost like I've seen it where a product manager can only get you so far before they're like, "Yeah, we need to pull in the team." And then what I've witnessed is when the engineers are when they push back against the concept of, "Hey, I don't want to be talking with these stakeholders all the time." Well, then you have leadership saying, "Well, we need to make sure we understand the problems that we're solving. We need to be business minded. We shouldn't just be focused on the code." Which I agree with that to a certain extent, but to your point, I don't know how I feel about engineers being the sole individual that's uh just talking with the business. And so that's but at the same time, like in my experience, I think sometimes with product, uh I think sometimes dreams get sold a little bit, and maybe that's just bad experiences that I've had. But I think sometimes you can have people that say things that either are not true or don't really give account to the level of complexity, and so then you end up having this big mess kind of going back to what you said, where it's like, all right, now things get lost in translation because one person is taking something that other people said and it's not really being conveyed properly.
Yeah, yeah. I would actually say I actually have a way to solve part of that problem, but let's continue on the org and then let's make adjustments to that problem. So I'm gonna take a note of what you just said, right? Which is a
Mhm.
preferred business analyst over product manager. And I just minimized everything because I hit one of my shortcuts. So I'm pretty sure that went away on video for a second, but it's cool. Uh but anyway, business analyst over
All right. So
product.
yeah, let's keep moving. Let's keep moving. So
Because I got an interesting point I want to bring up to you, I want to propose to you, and
okay,
I think you'll find it interesting.
okay, for sure. All right. So next, let's talk QA. Now, I think we're gonna probably agree on this. I personally don't think you really need QA. That is in no way a dig towards quality. I think quality is very important. My thing is I think engineers can and should own quality. I don't think we should just be coding things and then just tossing it over the wall to someone to say, all right, now it's your problem. Um, Number
Agreed.
one, yeah, right. Like, and number one, I don't believe that technology is advanced to a point where, in my personal opinion, I don't think you need manual testing. I think it just really extends the overall time frame for things. So I don't really see, or I'll say this for majority use cases, I don't see the need for manual testing. Uh, with that being said, I would go a step further and say, do we really need SDETs, right? Why why can't the engineers just write the tests themselves?
Yeah. You preach to the choir,
Um,
right?
yeah,
I don't have anything new to add
yeah,
here. I don't. The only thing I have to add here would be, uh, it's unfortunate because I actually manage some good SDETs, right? And I'm not. This
yeah,
is not a intention of coming for their jobs, right? But I agree with everything you said, right? Engineers should own quality, and if we're talking about automation, well, who better to write automated code than coders, in my
right,
opinion. And then at the end of the day, the people who are responsible for fixing it should be the engineers anyway, because again, if they own quality, they should be fixing that code. So I would agree. It'd be very tough for me to put an SDET here or a QA here. I would
yeah,
probably leave that blank if it were me. Um,
yeah,
and I was actually in a conversation. Just quick digress. I was in a conversation where there were some processes put in place because everybody's like, "Well, QA mistesting, QA mistesting, and QA mistesting." And I communicated. I was like, I actually don't like that narrative at all because before
yeah,
QA mistesting, the engineers had to miss it first.
yep, yep. And I'll make one comment on that before we move on. But I'll never forget uh back when you were my manager at a RSI, and you remember when we were working on a career ladder?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That was an interesting one, y'all. So we were working on this internal application. I won't go too deep into that, but we were working on this internal application for the company, and I remember I was trying to show our PM something, and I didn't quite understand how it worked. And I remember you had given me some feedback, and you were like, "Hey, you need to know how the application works." And so that's kind of stuck with me over the years for sure. Kind of going to this topic, because I feel like when engineers can just toss things over the wall, then that accountability shifts, right? And then it's
Yo,
to your point, it's like, okay, well, now you have a narrative that you can run with where it's like, well, you need to understand the requirements. Like if you're coding and you don't understand the requirements, we've already lost the plot before we did anything,
facts,
you know.
facts.
So
Preach.
so I yeah, so I agree with you where it's like, why are we even running with that narrative when you should have understood what you were building in the first place?
Yeah. Because
So
I'm telling you, like, and I think you're the same, right? If something happens in production, the first people I'm coming to is engineers, right? Like,
100%, 100%, right? I mean, and once again, no dig towards QA. Like you said, there's some quality folks out there. But I mean, look, I mean, their job is solely to focus on testing, and they're focusing on the test cases. If something breaks in production, first and foremost, I want to know. I admittedly, sometimes I do just like to kind of see like how do engineers go about even finding the problem in production. I love testing the constraints of our reliability. So
oh,
I love when something happens. I'm like, oh, okay. Meanwhile, I'm already looking it up myself. But
right.
I love to just kind of sit back and go, oh, okay. So what you gonna do?
Hey, Trey, sometimes be smooth having the answer already. Right? Like, see how this play out right now.
Yep. You already have the answer, but you're just kind of sitting there like, all right, yeah. So what's going on? And I don't hold QA accountable for that because in my opinion, that's not their job.
I agree. I agree.
So
You
hey,
mean tell me you
but yeah,
can't
we agree
debug
on
the
that.
application? Like, come on now.
Man,
We have a
man,
problem.
that's tough. Big problem. Big problem. Okay. I will ask one other kind of unrelated question, then we can move on to the next role. But um what are your thoughts on test-driven development? I know we talked about this years ago, but I don't think we've ever talked about that recently.
And when we say test driven development, just for the viewers and make sure I'm on the same page here, we're talking about write your test before you write the implementation.
Bingo.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds great, right? I think in
Mhm,
actuality, though, I don't think that really works. Right, like because
mhm.
if like in my experience, and I've tried, and again, I actually write a whole bunch of tests, and I
Yeah,
typically write my tests while I'm doing the implementation, actually to verify that my stuff works. So
right,
I wouldn't call that test driven development based on definition. Based on definitions, like hey, you
right,
write the test. That means in C sharp you might be creating your interfaces first, and obviously test gonna fail. Then you go behind the scenes, write the
right,
implementation, all that good stuff, right? I
right.
don't do that. I do it in parallel, and I prefer to do it in parallel, because what I found that a lot of people do, and I used to do this a lot in the past, is that I'll actually write the implementation first. Let's say I'm doing an API,
Mhm,
write the implementation first, then I
mhm.
will call the API directly, right? Oh yeah, I'm getting the data that I'm respecting, and then I go write the test,
Right.
right? And I think that actually is a poor way of going about it, because then when you write the test, you're actually going to write it to the happy path of what you just tried. Tend to do it that way. Versus if you're writing the
Yep.
test along with the implementation, one, you can start testing what you're building as you're building it. Plus, you're finding edge cases and other things like that, and you start
Yeah.
really mapping out your test to cover those edge cases, and you have a better implementation by doing so. So, to answer your
Yeah.
question, my thoughts on test driven development is that based on a definition, no, but I would write my test in parallel with my implementation.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I've never done test-driven development by the definition in practice either. So I'll withhold any strong judgment, but I would agree with you where like on the surface, to me, it seems like it either or I guess I feel like, man, that seems like that would create a lot of rework and just kind of a lot of upfront
Yeah,
effort
yeah,
versus like, hey, let's get the ball rolling a little bit. Uh, Now for me, I will admit, I am definitely one of those that you just mentioned. Like, I will write that implementation, then go write the test. And I agree that like it does test towards the happy path 100%, right? So I agree with everything you said. Okay. All right, let's move to the next role. So uh let's talk about Scrum Masters. Um, Hollywood, what are your thoughts?
okay. It depends on what we're asking them to do. If we're
Hmm.
asking them to support processes, then I would say yes. For the most part, when I say process, I mean like writing the user stories, uh, coming up or translating the requirements into given when thens and stuff like that. I would say yes. I don't like putting that responsibility on the engineers. I think so
Yep.
from my standpoint, I already asked the engineers to do a lot, and honestly, I just feel like that's part of
Right.
the job description, right? You write the code, you test the code, you need to understand the requirements, you need to do all this stuff, right?
Mhm.
As
Mhm.
far as the whole managerial task of creating stories and translating to given when thens or what however you do your user stories and all the retrospectives and stuff like that. Okay, let's have a scrum
Mhm.
master to handle that. Now, do I think
Mhm.
you know a scrum master per team? I don't necessarily believe in that. I think a scrum master could actually work across multiple teams. So that's how I
Okay.
would build it out.
Okay. Here are my thoughts. So I do agree. I think it is a lot to put on the engineers to say, "Hey, I want you not only to focus on quality, not only to focus on coding, but I also want you to run daily stand-ups, retros, planning, refinement, like your very traditional Scrum." However, I don't know if I feel like I would need a Scrum Master on the team, and my reason for that is, aside from that, um, I guess my question is just kind of like, what are we like, are we really gaining a lot of value out of that role? And once again, this is no dig to Scrum Masters. I actually worked with a tremendous, Scrum Master, and we still keep up with each other, but, um when it comes to like the traditional scrum, I would even take it a step further and say, number one, how many teams have you even seen follow scrum to the T when requirements are changing, right? Like typically what I've witnessed is you go into a project, you say, "Hey, we're going to do scrum." And then as the project evolves, things typically start to change, and you find yourself not even doing those ceremonies on a regular cadence. Not only that, but I would also say, like, even if we do need to do that, could that be the responsibility of someone that isn't necessarily an engineer, but might be involved with the team? Um, Even if it's the EM like setting up those meetings and maybe you're not attending them, but they're on the books so the engineers can join. And hey, I mean, for stand up, just say what you're working on, or if you guys would rather not have a daily meeting that you join to have stand up, do you want to do a chat stand up? Like, I just wonder, do we really need a single point to run those ceremonies?
Yeah, I mean, if I mean this is the order we building out, right? So are we following those processes or not?
I guess it's up to us, man. Like, I mean, me personally, I feel like trying to follow Scrum to the T is it can be overkill, right? Like, I feel like what works for the team, right? If it's, hey, maybe we do a retro, we don't do stand up every day, maybe we don't do refinement, or maybe we don't do planning, but we do refinement, like, I think it's ultimately up to the team, and for me, I would leave it blank, but I'm also cool with putting the scrum master in.
Yeah, I would say I would put a scrum master because I'm not setting up
All right.
those meetings. Yeah, I'm not setting up meetings.
All right, so we're gonna put scrum master. Good grief. Cool. All right. Let's move to the next one. So let's talk about DevOps. So
Negative.
DevOps is an interesting one. What'd you say?
I said negative, bruh. Nah. Go ahead though. Go
So
ahead.
here's what I was gonna say. And for the record, I agree with Hollywood. You know, I feel my gut tells me we probably don't need DevOps. The one thing that I would bring up is I have heard I don't know if you've ever heard the concept of segregation of duties, which says that the people that have worked on deliverables that are going into production shouldn't necessarily be the ones that are deploying those deliverables. Um, but in my opinion, like I think I don't I don't buy that to the point where I think we actually need like DevOps on the team. Like that's just my opinion. I mean, hey.
Yeah, I think what you said is true, right? The people who are creating the software shouldn't be responsible for deploying it to production. And the reason why I think that's true is because no person should be responsible for deploying it to production. There should be tools that we are using that automates this entire workflow. Feel like when you throw people at problems, you come up with manual processes.
Yeah, that's fair. But who would be the one, or let me say this. If if there's an approval gate, who would be the one that approves that without DevOps?
I have a better question for you. Why is there a gate?
Because do you really want to automatically deploy to production without having some sort of sign off?
Yep.
Once again, sign off from a person that has not contributed to that release. I'm just
Yep.
playing devil's advocate
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
record, like
No, I'm with you. If engineers own quality and we are truly invested in quality, I should be able to release to
Mhm.
production anytime I want to.
I agree. I agree. I agree. So I'm with you personally. I don't think you really need DevOps on a Scrum team. I will say this. I feel like a lot of the engineers that I've worked with over my tenure, it seems like when it comes to like CI/CD, you typically see the experience kind of taper off a little bit. Um, that was one thing I fought for back when I was an EM because they would constantly like uh restrict our access to work within AWS. And
Mhm.
man, I was like, look, y'all gotta give us the necessary access so we can do our jobs, because at the end of the day, like to your point, like if we own quality, I really don't care about DevOps versus one of the engineers. We need to get this into production,
Right.
So like hey, let's stop with the bureaucracy and let's work on delivering value.
Yeah.
Um, so I agree. I agree with you
Because
110%
my
there.
thing is this, and I'll leave it at this, right? Is that if there's a gate, right? And I work at companies and I've worked at companies that have these gates.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and even with these gates, they still deploy bugs. So if they deploy bugs with the gates, they're probably going to deploy bugs without the gates.
Yep.
And the people who are responsible for fixing it are still going to be the engineers. So we might as well deploy it and let the engineers fix it. Or better yet, again, really focus on quality, really care about quality and fix it there. Shift left and fix it there.
I agree. You preach it to the choir. I completely agree. Okay. So let's see here. Are there any architects? I almost forgot about architects. So
You did right. You did right.
so, so
Go
what
go
I'm
with
gonna
your first
do,
thought, Trev. Go with your
I'm
first
gonna
thought.
I'm gonna let you I'm gonna let you speak to whether you think a Scrum team should have an architect or not.
I would say it depends on who you want to have the responsibility of creating the technical vision for the organization. Right? Because within the Scrum team, I mean, sure you could have an architect, but I actually don't think an architect belongs within the Scrum team necessarily. And here's why. If I'm the architect, if I'm putting my architect hat on, which I've never been an architect, but definitely draw some architectural diagrams. If I am architecting out a system, right? I am building a framework the same way I expect senior engineers to build out frameworks. I'm building a framework where you can take this and apply it to other implementations or other solutions that you're actually doing. Now, obviously, there's going to be
Mhm.
some tweaking that you have to do in various places, but for the most part, I'm providing a framework, and then we'll start with the framework as the baseline, start tweaking it
Mhm.
for the various solutions. So
Mhm.
if we expect the architect to do that, then I'm all for having an architect. Again, I wouldn't have him in a Scrum team necessarily, uh, he would still report to engineering manager, but I would have, or maybe not. I would probably maybe have them like as peers from an organizational hierarchy standpoint on the same level.
Mhm, mhm,
But if I do it just for a scrum team, to me that's expensive for the amount of work I don't think I'm actually going to get. Like how many, how often do we
mhm.
need an architect to actually, create architecture?
Well, so I agree, and I would personally, I would take it a step. And for the record, I'm gonna start talking about engineering management a little bit. For the record, I do think that a lot of engineering managers out in the industry, or at least the ones that I've come across, don't code. So there is that. But it was interesting when you said, well, who's building out this vision for our systems, right? In the architecture. I'm not gonna hold you. Like for me, I feel like that's going to be me and any senior engineers on the team. Like,
That's fair.
and I personally, and this isn't. I'm not trying to say that all engineering managers have the same roles and responsibilities because I actually, in my experience, I feel like it varies quite a bit depending on your org and your company. But I feel like a strong technical EM, honestly, in collaboration with their team, I feel can build out that vision. Not only that, I would take it a step further and say they probably have a better idea of what the vision should be. I've been in calls where an architect says something and you're sitting there and you're like, that sounds great on paper, but it simply doesn't work with what our team is dealing with versus what this team is dealing with and how we have to integrate. Like when you're more boots on the ground, like kind of all of those interdependencies versus an architect, they're coming in from this super high level and they're not writing a lick of code, like they draw a diagram and they're gone. So
Mhm.
that's just my perspective.
Yeah, it's a lot of theory involved, right? And I believe like we could do this. Yeah, we could do a lot of stuff, right? Like that's true.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
so yeah, I would agree. And still and I'm coming at it from the perspective of what does the engineering manager do? Because if the engineering manager is actually strong technically, then you're right. Like I don't believe you actually need an architect. And that kind of brings up, a question. We're obviously building out this org, right? Like I would think we would expect the engineering manager to be technical. But if an engineering manager is not technical or hands-on from a technical standpoint, what exactly is the engineering manager doing?
Oh, oh, oh. Hollywood coming, you coming for headshots with that one.
All the smoke. I
You
want all
hey,
the
that's
smoke,
when I
right?
that's when I start pulling out my famous question. What do you do?
Right. Hey, listen, if
Like,
somebody at work ever asks you that, just know that, hey, do you already know what they think about you right now? Like if they gotta ask you
yeah,
what do you do? It's not looking
yeah,
good for you,
yeah,
buddy.
yeah, right, right. So yeah, I completely agree. I 100% agree. And I think if an engineering manager is not strong technically, I I and you're dealing with an existing team at the very least, I don't know how much control you will have of your team. Because if you
That's
get
true.
in a room with yeah, if you get in a room with talented engineers, assuming you have talented engineers, and you can't speak the same lingo as them, once again, we've lost the plot. They're not going to respect you.
They're not
They're
gonna
going to view
respect
you in the same light as the product manager, and they're
you.
going to say, "Okay, I have to dumb this down times 100
Yep.
to convey what I'm trying to say." And then they lose faith, right? They
Yep.
lose faith.
They're
And
gonna ask
then
the
what
same
you have
question,
is you have
right? Why are you here?
they're going to be looking at you. Why are you here? What do you do? So
Yep.
and and then everybody's going to lose in the end,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. If I had to
So
go to my senior every time I need answers, we have a problem. I don't
right,
need to be here, right? Like we can skip the middleman. Like
right, right. I completely agree. So, if you're cool with it, I would vote we don't have an architect.
I'm always cool with it. Always cool with
All
it.
right, cool.
Yeah.
So, so are there any roles we did not discuss, at least at the Scrum team level? I don't think so.
Nah,
I think
maybe
we've
got it.
exhausted the Scrum team level. All right, cool. So, for those listening, we at this point at the Scrum team level, we have an we have the engineer, we have a product manager, we have a scrum master, we don't have an architect, we don't have QA, and we don't have DevOps. Um, Before we go to the next level, Hollywood, do you want to kind of hit back on what you were saying about the product manager versus business analyst?
Yeah. So, you were talking about business analysts can take the role of a project product manager, right? Or PM. And so, and mainly
Yes.
because you want that kind of communication where the BA can understand requirements as well as the BA can understand the technical aspect, right? So
Right.
ideally, if an engineer has like some technical questions and stuff like that, they can go talk to a BA. They're going to go talk to a BA before they talk to a PM, more than likely, right?
Right. Right. Right.
What I would say is that kind of is dependent on what we expect from an engineering manager. Because to me, if we expect the engineering manager to be strong technically, I would also expect them to be able to translate products to product requirements to also engineering technical terms. Right. So the same responsibility that I get
Abs-
to that engineer to be able to do all these things like own quality, testing, seniors for owning architecture or in combination or collaboration with engineering manager. I expect engineering
mhm.
managers not just be strong technically, but you're also able to communicate with product. And so actually, I would actually put product managers and engineering managers side by side.
Okay.
Because
Let's do that.
because remember we said the engineer is not really going to go talk to the product person anyway. So really no point for the product person to really be that close to the team. Or not that close to the team, but like within the team.
Mhm.
Let the PM be on the same level as engineer manager. They should communicate together. And I have some good PMs that we do this perfectly. Like we communicate very well together. Eric is one of them.
Mhm.
Uh there are conversations that person's having, the PM's having, that I don't even have to be a part of because and I don't want to be a part of because they're
Mhm.
communicating and articulating the team very well, even from a limited technical standpoint. And so I can focus
Mhm.
more on the Scrum team and from the technical standpoint, and the PM can focus more on the Scrum team from a product driven standpoint. So that's how I
That
would
makes sense.
actually build it out.
Yeah. 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 So let me ask you this: how do you guys tackle situations where the business comes to a product manager? They say, "We want this feature," and this feature was not a part of any roadmap. This is a brand new requirement. How does the product manager these product managers that you work with, because you said they're really good, what's their process for that intake process?
So I don't know the full process. What
Mhm,
I will say, and I think this is indicative of a good one, right? Is that
mhm,
when a new requirement comes in, let's say it's in the middle of the sprint or the middle of the
mhm,
PI or quarter
mhm,
for those listening in, I
mhm,
likely don't even know about it, right? Because they brought it
mhm,
in, they prioritized it. They said, okay, cool. Hey, a new priority has come in. That's fine, but we're already in middle of PI. Hey,
mhm,
this is what our roadmap looks like. We can go and adjust our roadmap. See, to me,
mhm,
priorities coming in and adjusting roadmaps is perfectly fine. Like that should be an expectation. That's being
mhm,
agile. What's not being agile
mhm,
is, oh, we're in the second sprint. Oh, hey, new priorities come in. We gotta like shuffle everything around. Right. I think that's what bad PMs do. I think they come in, it's like, hey,
mhm.
I know we're in the middle of the PI or a quarter, and but the business wants this, so we need to deliver it, right? Like there has to be some
Yeah,
pushback and conversations and stuff like that. I think good PMs manage that relationship very, very well before engineering's ever brought into the conversation. So that's how I
yeah.
would expect it to work.
Yeah, that and I mean, that sounds great. Unfortunately, I I have dealt with the latter that you mentioned, which is where when things change, it seems like everything beneath it changes, you know? And that in my experience, that's been frustrating because to your point, it's like, well, we were in the middle of this journey and now that has completely flipped on its head. I've also experienced instances where, you have a product managers speak to things, speak to technical things and not really understand what they're saying. And then there are downstream implications from that, right? Where now they've promised something and reality does not align with what they have communicated. But now that stuff is already out and it's already gone around, right? So now you have to kind of come in as kind of the big bad wolf to rein everything in.
Yeah, I think that to be honest, I think that's really where the director should really come in and really start reducing that noise as well. So, I mean, we have directors still in our org when we get done, but
Hmm.
that noise should be reduced somewhere. But also too, and this kind of goes back to like when you were talking about if you have an engineering manager who's not strong technically and they start speaking and you lose all trust from the engineering standpoint.
Hmm.
It's the same thing with product managers. If you're going to start talking technical and you truly don't understand the technical requirements, right? Like you've done something
Hmm.
wrong. Just to be very clear, you've done something wrong
Hmm.
because either you shouldn't speak on something you don't know, or this is a perfect time to bring in an engineering manager and say, hey, I need you to be part of this conversation. Right. I think a
Yeah.
good product manager has good discernment of when to bring in the engineering role and when not. Because I know I made a comment on one of the previous episodes about how we weren't included and the commitment was made to like this OEM. And then
Hmm.
they came in and said, hey, EB, if we try really hard, we can do it. Right. That's terrible.
Hmm.
Right. And that wasn't
Yeah.
on the PM
Yeah.
of this. I was saying it was on another person. But that's when you need to bring the engineering manager and say, hey, actually, we need representation before we start making commitments. But if you're just having a conversation about, hey, hypotheticals of what you could do or something laid down on the roadmap, I don't need to be part of that conversation, nor do I want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I really like what you said, and from that perspective, like I actually do agree with having a product manager at that level, and keeping them in the org chart, assuming that they kind of abide by the things that you said. Now, one last thing, and then we can move on. But I know in the past you've spoken to technical product managers, and I've never really worked with a technical product manager. Like when I say technical product manager, I'm not trying to say that all product managers are not technical, but rather I'm speaking towards the explicit title. So I know that there are TPMs out there in the industry. Every product manager that I've worked with, they just had the title of product manager. Um, would you prefer a technical product manager just over a product manager?
Not with the current org that we have set up. No.
Okay. Okay.
Because if you're looking for a strong technical engineering manager, what is a strong technical PM going to bring? Right. Like
Mhm.
if you kind of take it from a jack of all trades, a master of none, right? Then it's like, okay, they're kind of
Mhm.
good technically, they're kind of good product, but you don't get all of it when you can just have a
Mhm.
dedicated person for product and a dedicated person for um engineering related tasks. So that's probably how I would tackle it. But again, it depends on the roles and
Mhm.
responsibilities. But I think for the org
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
built, we don't really need a TPM.
Okay. Do you think in a hypothetical org, not this one, but a hypothetical org where maybe the engineering manager isn't as strong, you think maybe a technical product manager would be more helpful?
I think a TPM would be more helpful than a non-technical engineering manager. I think a TPM would be a lot more helpful and useful to the engineering team and the product work than an engineering manager ever
Mhm.
could be. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, I controversial. Uh, I would replace the engineering manager with the TPM if it were
Okay.
me. That's what I
Okay.
would do.
Okay. Fair. Fair. Okay, cool. All right, let's move on. Let's move on. So obviously I'm thinking we probably need to break this out. So for those listening at this point, we have on the Scrum team, an engineer, a product manager. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I need to take this box out. Let me delete that. All right. So on the Scrum team, we have the engineer and the Scrum Master. So it would just be X number of engineers with Scrum Master that report up to the engineering manager. If we go a level up, we have an engineering manager who works in collaboration with a product manager who would not report to the engineering manager, but would rather be their peer. Uh, Now we're going to take it up another level to the director, VP, whatever we think makes the most sense. I would say if the engineering manager and the product manager are peers of each other, do they report to the same director or VP? And then my follow-up question to that is, would it be a director? Would it be a VP? Hollywood, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it would be one or the other. Um, I don't think it would be both. And if it is both, I would have to understand what the roles and responsibilities or the deltas between the two would be.
Hmm.
Because I would expect the VP to manage multiple orgs. All right. So it just wouldn't be one org. I would expect them to manage multiple orgs. I don't know if I
Yep.
would expect a director to manage multiple orgs. And so if I
Hmm.
if I'm not expecting a director to manage multiple orgs, I don't know if I actually need the director. If anything, I would have the engineering manager or a senior engineering manager and have that reporting type of structure. But to be perfectly honest, I don't even think I would have that. I would think I would remove the director, and whether you senior engineering
Mhm,
manager or engineering manager, you still at the you at the level you at, right? Um,
mhm.
for this team, and then I would probably move out the director and make it a VP.
Okay. And I think I agree with that, right? Like, okay. I think I would agree with that, right? Like, I like the idea to your point, you have a VP that manages multiple orgs. And I do think that having an engineering manager and a product manager at some point rolling up to a central point, in my personal opinion, I do think that has value. Because I think at the end of the day, the product that you guys are supporting, there's kind of a line, right? Where at this line the buck stops.
Mhm.
And there's someone high enough to where as things escalate, then they I mean, you both are accountable for to the same person, right? I've
Yep,
been
yep.
yeah, I've been in orgs, like in my experience as an engineering manager, I rolled up to a completely different SVP than the product folks, right? And I felt like with whether it was my team or other teams, there it felt like there were often misalignments on different accountabilities from as far as like requirements and delivering certain things for certain products. And so often what would happen is they were focused on one initiative and they had their goals. And then on the engineering side, we had our initiatives, we had our goals. And then product, they might be in good graces, but then we might be getting told to go a different direction. And then it would be vice versa, where we would be told something and we would execute that, and our leadership is like, great. But then on the product side, they're like, what are you guys doing? Like we need to be doing da 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 da. And I just felt like there was a lot of misalignment because there was no central point that things would eventually roll up to where the buck stops here, and whatever this person says is law across all of us.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and I've been a part of orgs where there's a single point, right? But it's so far up that sure they're
yeah,
in it together, right? But then once it
yeah,
splits,
yeah,
it's split, right? Engineering starts blaming
yeah,
product starts blaming engineering. You keep that as low as possible, right? Where it's like, hey, the engineering manager and product, they're on the same, they report to the same person. So now
yeah,
they you in it together. You can't be like, oh well, this person, like what you mean this person? Like, aren't
yeah,
y'all working together? Like that's a thing, right? So I agree with you.
yeah. Okay, cool. All right, that was an easy one. So all right, so I'm just gonna reiterate this for the folks that are listening that might not be able to see our little diagram we have going. So, on Scrum team level, we have an engineer, we have X number of engineers, we have Scrum Master that all roll up to the engineering manager. Then we have the product manager that will be a peer of the engineering manager. The engineering manager and the product manager will both roll up to a VP over that whatever line of business, and we can just imagine other orgs somewhere horizontally. Um, Now let's take it to the next level. So I have a box here that says SVP. And I just kind of put there as a default. Uh I don't know if we really need an SVP, but I will say this. In a lot of my experience, I see a lot of SVPs.
Yeah.
So I would say this. I would say this, Hollywood, based on your comments from earlier. I'm okay with removing the SVP. My question to you is, I'll have a twofold question. Number one, why do companies have so many SVPs if we don't think we need one? And then number two, would a VP be able, do you think a VP can handle reporting directly to the CTO?
Yeah, again, I would have to understand the deltas between the SVP and VP. I'm not even close to that level, right? But
Yeah, me either.
I can only imagine that you have so many because there's only limited amount of C level roles, right? So
Mm,
if you think about it from a progression standpoint, a career progression standpoint, am I going to be a
mhm.
VP forever? Like I want to get to the next level. How do I do that? Well, I can get to C level. Maybe I get to senior. I can put senior in front of my name, right? Same thing with like engineers, right? Like we want to become senior. At the end
Fair,
of the day,
fair.
is the
Good
work
point.
really that different?
That's a good point, right? Like, if we think about this engineering manager we have down here, that could easily be a senior engineering manager, and
Yep.
they just got promoted, but it wasn't like they moved up to a director or in our org, a VP.
Yep.
So you could say the same here. So we could remove this. Now my next question is, all right, this is a VP. Do you think do you think there's any reason for this to be an SVP? I guess this goes back to your comments of you have to understand like roles and responsibilities, right?
Yeah, I think when we talk about like, so when I'm looking at like engineering manager and VPs, I'm looking at it as, hey, this could be any level of that title, right? So whether it's VP or
Mm-hmm.
senior, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
engineering manager or senior, like they all have
Mm-hmm.
very similar responsibilities. Maybe the senior engineering manager has more teams that
Mm-hmm.
reports to them, right? Maybe the senior VP has more lines of businesses that reports into it, right? Into them, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how I
Mm-hmm.
look at it, as more of an expansion of the responsibilities. But I don't think I see a scenario where a VP really needs to report into a senior VP. I don't see a scenario where engineering manager needs to report into the senior engineering manager. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm big.
Mm-hmm.
I'm real big on like flat organizations, as flat as possible. And
Yeah,
actually, why
yeah.
I like with like these main companies, at least like at Amazon, there were like levels like L5, 6, 7, 8, right? Like it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't no VP, senior VP, and things like that, which I'm sure they probably had them, but
Mm-hmm.
the reporting structure wasn't really like that.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. All right. And then we had the CTO. So I mean, Hollywood, you're cool with keeping the CTO, right? I think
Yeah,
I
oh
think
yeah,
you
yeah.
should.
I think all C
Yeah, okay. All
levels,
right. I just
yeah.
want to make sure. I want to make sure.
I think all C levels make sense, right? Like for the most part. Like I can't think of any C level, maybe chief of human resources who was called at Coldplay, but other than that, like,
Hey,
remove that role.
if we didn't have a CTO, I'd be like, hey, y'all put me on the earnings call. Well, I get on there, start talking reckless. Nah, nah. Cool. So we have built out our org chart. So let's just rename everything from the bottom going up. So at the very bottom, we have our Scrum team made up of X number of engineers with a Scrum Master. They would all report up to an engineering manager. The engineering manager would have the product manager as their peer. Both of them would report up to some VP, SVP, whatever makes sense. And then beyond that, they would just report into the CTO. So, kind of going to what Hollywood just mentioned about flat structures, I definitely think this org chart resembles, being a little more flat. Um, I also agree with what you said that, I do agree with being a little more flat. I think when you start adding in all these different levels, I think you start running into misalignment, you start running into bureaucracy, and I think it ultimately just slows things down. So uh I like this chart that we've kind of come up with. And yeah, I'm actually going to uh take a screenshot of this and kind of keep this for my personal reference in the future. So if I'm ever, building out an org, or if I'm ever kind of being consulted on something of this nature, then I might be able to point back to, oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I would say definitely keep it for the. I think we have a episode coming up on agile and stuff like that. I'll definitely kind of want to reference this as to
Oh
how we got to
yeah.
where we got to in agile, and it's because organizations are no longer as flat as they should be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For sure, for sure. Let me ask you this. I'll end it with this question. Do you think AI changes any of this?
Well, I would say, in my opinion, I would say I think AI actually makes this more realistic.
Hmm.
Right, because I think we're the way we build it in our ideal scenario, but there is so many other things that come into play where we have to, unfortunately throw people at the problem, right?
Hmm.
But I don't have to throw people at DevOps anymore. I have AI.
Yeah,
I don't have to throw people at
yeah,
architecture anymore for the most part. I have AI. My X number of engineers may not be X number. Maybe it's just one engineer, right? And
yeah,
I have
yeah,
AI that 10X is an engineer. And the more I use AI tools, the more I'm really starting to believe that's a thing. And
yeah.
then your engineering managers, they'll probably still be there, but I think that AI actually increases the scope of their role. where we talk about in our ideal, or they're super technical. I want my engineer managers to at least be close to the code where they can actually explain it, understand it. Maybe they don't write
Yeah.
it right, but at least they can do architectural
Yeah.
responsibilities, right? And then for product, I think you always gonna need product. I don't think AI is gonna replace people talking to
Yeah.
people, where I think that human interaction really, really means something. But I do think
Yeah.
AI actually makes this a lot more realistic.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. All right. Hey, I love this org chart that we built out, and I really enjoyed this exercise. So yeah, Hollywood, do you have any thoughts before we close out and we end our episode?
No thoughts. This was fun. I'm looking forward to potentially doing more exercises like this in the future. Definitely looking forward to the agile conversation. It may not be a long conversation, but it would definitely be a conversation. But yeah, no, this is great. This is great.
I think we'll agree on a lot of thoughts on that as well. So cool. All right. Well, hey, it's your boy Trev, Hollywood Code Switch
All right,
Podcast. We are out. Until next
we
time.
out.
I've seen the powerful fall when the people work together as one. I need you to live or let die. Hold your head high. I'm by your side till it's one. Together we can hold on.